Some acts of kindness are so quiet that no one notices them. But sometimes, those silent moments become the reason someone keeps going. The restaurant was alive with noise that evening. Plates clinked, chairs scraped softly against the floor, and conversations overlapped in a familiar rhythm that belonged to places where people came to eat, talk, and forget the weight of their days. Warm yellow lights hung above each table, giving the room a comforting glow that made everything feel safer than the world outside. At one corner table, however, the warmth seemed to stop. A woman sat there with her young child, both of them unusually still. The table was small, pressed close to the wall, almost hidden from the center of the room. In front of them sat a single plate of food, carefully divided in half. The woman had arranged it that way with deliberate care, as if trying to make one meal look like two. Her son swung his legs under the chair, stopping every now and then to glance at the plate. His eyes followed the fork as his mother lifted a bite and placed it gently in her mouth. He waited. Then he asked, quietly enough that only she could hear, "Are we going to eat more later?" She smiled at him, a practiced smile, the kind that parents learn to use when they want to protect their children from truths they are not ready to carry. "This is enough," she said softly. "Take small bites." The boy nodded, trusting her completely. Across the room, a waiter noticed. His name was Daniel. He had worked at the restaurant for nearly 6 years, long enough to recognize patterns in people. He could tell who was celebrating, who was arguing, who was there for comfort, and who was counting every dollar in their pocket before deciding what to order. Experience had taught him to read silence just as clearly as conversation. He had noticed the woman and her child the moment they walked in. They had hesitated at the door, scanning the menu posted near the entrance, longer than most customers did. When they finally chose a table, it wasn't the one by the window or near the center. It was the smallest one, the easiest to overlook. Daniel approached them with menus and a polite smile. The woman's eyes moved quickly over the options before she closed the menu and handed it back. "We'll have just one dish," she said, her voice calm but careful. "And water, please." Daniel nodded without comment, but something in her tone stayed with him. As the evening went on, he found himself glancing toward their table more often than usual. He noticed how she ate slowly, how she made sure her child had more than she did. He noticed the way the boy looked around the restaurant, watching other tables where plates arrived full and steaming, laughter spilling freely into the air. At one point, the boy leaned closer to his mother and whispered something. Daniel didn't hear the words, but he saw her expression change. Her smile tightened, and for a brief moment, her eyes dropped to the table, as if she needed to gather herself before responding. Daniel felt a familiar ache in his chest. He had grown up watching his own mother make similar choices. He remembered nights when dinner was stretched thinner than it should have been, when she insisted she wasn't hungry so that he could eat a little more. Back then, he hadn't fully understood what she was giving up. Now, years later, he understood all too well. When it was time to bring the bill, Daniel hesitated. He stood at the counter, holding the small piece of paper, listening to the hum of the restaurant around him. There were rules, of course, procedures, boundaries, but there was also something else, something that mattered more in moments like this. He took a breath and made a decision. Instead of placing the bill on their table, Daniel walked to the register and paid it himself. It wasn't a large amount, but it wasn't insignificant either. Still, he didn't think twice. Some choices didn't need overthinking. Then he went back to the kitchen. A few minutes later, he returned to their table carrying more food than they had ordered. Carefully, he placed the plates down one by one, filling the small table until there was barely any space left. The woman's eyes widened in alarm. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, standing halfway from her chair. We didn't order this. There must be a mistake. Daniel met her gaze, keeping his voice low so no one else would hear. There's no mistake, he said gently. Tonight, this is for you. She shook her head, confusion and fear mixing in her expression. I can't pay for this. You don't have to, Daniel replied. For a moment, she simply stared at him. Her hands trembled slightly as she rested them on the edge of the table. The boy looked from his mother to the food and back again, unsure whether he was allowed to be excited. Why? She finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Daniel paused. He could have given her an easy answer, something casual to deflect the weight of the moment. But instead, he chose honesty. Because everyone deserves to eat without feeling ashamed, he said. The woman swallowed hard. Her eyes filled with tears she had been holding back all evening. She pressed her lips together, nodding slowly as if words had failed her. Thank you, she said at last. You have no idea what this means. Daniel smiled, a small, genuine smile. I think I do, he replied. He turned and walked away before the moment could draw attention, disappearing back into the rhythm of the restaurant. There were other tables to serve, other orders to take. Life moved on, as it always did. But at that small corner table, everything had changed. The boy's face lit up as his mother finally nodded. He reached for his fork with excitement, laughter breaking free as he tasted food he hadn't expected to have. The woman watched him, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks as she pretended to focus on her plate. That night, they didn't just eat until they were full. They ate without fear. When they finished, the woman gathered her things slowly, making sure her child was warm and ready to go. Before leaving, she glanced toward the kitchen one last time, hoping to catch a glimpse of Daniel so she could thank him again. She didn't see him, but she left something behind on the table instead. A folded napkin, carefully placed beneath a glass. Later that night, when the restaurant had emptied and the lights were dimmed, Daniel returned to clear the table. He found the napkin and unfolded it. Inside was a short note, written in careful handwriting. You reminded me that dignity still exists. I will never forget this. Daniel stood there for a long moment, reading the words again and again. Then he folded the note and slipped it into his pocket. Somewhere outside, the city continued its restless movement. People hurried past each other, unaware of the quiet exchange that had taken place inside a small restaurant. No cameras recorded it, no applause followed it. No one posted about it online. But for one mother, one child, and one waiter, that night became a reminder of something essential: that kindness does not need permission, that dignity can be offered without words, and that sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones written silently over a shared meal.